Well, hello everyone. Thanks to those of you that checked out part 1 of the weekly Q&A video. If you haven't, then make sure after you watch this one, you go back and watch the other one too, alright? Can we do that? Yeah, let's do that. So, this is part 2, where we talk about everything else that's not NFL related. I hope in the future y'all start asking me more life questions, because sometimes I feel like that's when I have the most fun, and I think you guys can have the most fun too. But let's see what we got this go round. Cody Martin kicks us off by asking let's back up, start over. Will the so-called blue wave happen? I know your Wyoming Trump-loving ass, Cody, would love nothing more than for the blue wave to totally dissipate. And the reality is regardless of what you think about Trump, it's a midterm election, incumbent party, generally, especially in non-true wartime conditions, incumbent party doesn't do well. They could sometimes get crushed, caught up in the wave. You see this happen. You saw this happen with the Democrats getting steamrolled by Newt Gingrich and the GOP's contract with America in 94 after Clinton won the election in 92. You saw this happen after Obama won in 2008 by the margin that he did. Come 2010, you had another GOP wave. You saw this happen in 2006 after 6 years of Bush's presidency. 2006, the Democrats took control of both houses of Congress for the first time since 94. So would it necessarily be a surprise that it would happen? No. Do I feel like there will be seats that will be naturally lost by the GOP? Absolutely. Is there going to be a wave? It's interesting because there could be a wave in 2018 based off of people not liking Trump and what he represents, but then come 2020, when you talk about presidential elections, that could be a little bit different because people could ultimately be voting by their pocketbook, by the economy, how their lives are going. And if the economy hasn't tanked at that point or something else bad significantly hasn't happened, it'd be unwise to dismiss Trump's chances in 2020 because as the incumbent, he has a natural advantage built in. Incumbents don't lose that often. And even when you go back to George H.W. Bush, when you go back to Bush 41 in 92, part of the reason he ultimately lost that election was because you had not only a Southern governor in Bill Clinton, but that didn't even matter so much because in a number of the Southern states that Bill won, he was winning with like 40% of the vote. It was because Ross Perot was there as a third-party candidate, even with the I quit, I'm back stuff. When you look at Perot in 92, he did enough to divide the map to where back then, Perot in the race was really damaging for George H.W. Bush, whereas now it would be a little bit more split when you talk about the voters that would go for like a Perot. You'd be bleeding off some liberals and some independents and some moderate conservatives over there, so it's a little different. But back then, it was largely Republican voters and independent voters went for Perot, which was a huge boon and benefit to Clinton. And that's the last time an incumbent president lost his bid for re-election. You know, before that, it was Jimmy Carter in 80. So it doesn't happen all the time. It's not easy. Not easy at all. There's a chance the blue wave happens, but it'll be about turnout and different things. And we'll see. Because GOP controls everything and they can't get out of their own damn way to end gridlock themselves. It's not going to get any better if you got some checks and balances there with the Dems. Now, in terms of the Dems, though, are they going to get control of the Senate? The challenge is finding where the math really works. They have a number of House seats that they have to flip. So there could be a wave, and they still don't get back control of the House either. Or if they do, it won't be by a very large margin. Jeff's ego. Again, my ego's so big, it's got its own Twitter handle. And as you found out, as I mentioned on Twitter, it now writes its own articles. That, my friends, is an ego. Why do you believe in things being rigged so much? Vinny, because they are. Like, this world is fundamentally rigged. And if you don't believe that, I secretly yearn for the days where I could have that type of naivety about the world. as you go along and you get older and you experience more of life, and don't be in a rush to do so. Enjoy trying to get your degree at Hofstra. Do you, man. Do you. I wish nothing but the best for you. Do you. But understand that the world can be incredibly rigged. It's all fucking work. It's all rigged. It really is. Then he also asks, how come so many Dems that talk about the 1% are actually part of it? Ain't that the real kick of the seat? Because ultimately, money talks and all of the bullshit walks, specifically when it comes to politics. And it's what I've talked about before. And GOPers will fucking get mad at me, but you can kiss my motherfucking ass. The fact is, the GOP takes this path. The Dems take this path. Kind of both equally idiotic. And they ultimately result in the same spot. Now, you could believe that the Democrats have all these great, wonderful ideas. And a lot of them are, not surprisingly, naive, lacking full and proper context. GOP, same fucking thing. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't. But when you talk about the 1%, yeah, because it's a lot of rich people that want to run because now they've got money. Now they want power. And they want the power to be able to protect their money so that way they can make, guess what, even more fucking money. Yeah. And then he asks, are you an atheist? No. There are certain things and certain times and certain people that come into your world and it makes you believe in some type of higher power. That said, that doesn't mean that I conform to the beliefs that your modern churches try to prostitute out there for the sakes of, oh my God, I got to make money, or the bullshit of the prosperity gospel. Like, plant your seed, plant your seed. Like, it's one thing, and if you got a beautiful woman asking you to plant their seed inside of you, then you're trying to make a baby. You're trying to make legacies. You're trying to make sons. You know, that type of thing. But not to sit there and say, oh, you think if Jesus was alive, he would sit there and fucking walk around or ride on a camel, he'd be flying a jet. No, it kind of goes against everything Jesus would be about, I believe. He wouldn't be begging for money for a $54 million private fucking jet. No, not an atheist at all. Just because I don't sit there and Bible thump or Quran bump or Torah bump or anything like that, that doesn't mean I'm an atheist. I can be very spiritual and believe in those things. I believe that things happen for a reason. There's no question. Like, there's a reason I came out here to Virginia. You know, and still to this day, even as certain things go south and certain things don't look good and certain things don't work out, then other things do and other things work out very well. And you find new people and you find new opportunities and you make it work. And, you know, it's just, I always believe in some type of intelligent design, but I think the way that mortal man defines it is where kind of like the flaw is. But I'm not an atheist at all. I don't think I can be called one. Alex Saida, what do the Bulls need to do via free agency in the draft to be relevant again? Fire Gar Forman and John Paxson. Does anything else matter? Fire Gar Forman and John Paxson. London is red. What happens first? Brock Lesnar in the UFC or Gronkowski in WWE? I'm pretty sure it's Brock Lesnar in UFC, isn't it? I would think. Alex Saida comes back and asks again, why do you hate Colin Cowherd so much? He doesn't bother me that much. He's not like a Skip Bayless or a Nick Wright or somebody like that. Colin Cowherd is annoying to me, though, because when he makes an argument, like from a sports standpoint, he will sit there and say, well, people say that. No, they really don't say that, dude. They actually say the exact opposite. You're making up a bullshit argument. And then he will provide the most ridiculous, out-of-context answers imaginable. But, respect to the dude, made himself a lot of money in that industry. Do you, dude? Because ultimately, when it really matters, it's about, in that business, getting attention and making money. It doesn't fucking matter if you're right. So I find it funny sometimes, like, when I'm right about stuff, I barely ever hear about it. But when I'm wrong, I'll hear about it more for sure. But it doesn't fucking matter. Because it doesn't. If anything, being wrong more spectacularly more often would be better for me than actually caring about accuracy and trying to be right every once in a while. Just saying. Rob Lewis, J.R. Smith or Nick Young? J.R. Smith. Vols fan. Most underrated NBA player of all time at each position. All right, now that's too goddamn much thinking right now. That's way too much thinking right now. Way too much. When I think of most underrated guys, I think of guys like Bernard King and Dominique Wilkins. But Joe Dumars. But to sit there and narrow it down by position, we don't have the time to do that. Maybe I'll answer this one actually on Twitter. Cloud asks, why do you think 76ers fans like Bryan Colangelo? I don't know. I kind of just enjoy trolling Sixers fans every once in a while, if we're being realistic. I mean, because Sixers fans are sitting there talking shit about trust the process when they traded up for fucking Markelle Fultz. Like, I've got freezing cold takes retweeting my shit. Who looks like a fucking moron now, especially when you look at how Jason Tatum played as a rookie. Let's slow down a little frickin' bit, and let's start talking trash when the Sixers are in the NBA Finals. The process has finally picked up some momentum. The process is finally starting to pay off a little bit, but the payoff has not come yet. Just saying. And so I say that just to fuck with you a little bit, because a lot of Sixers fans have this great fascination for Sam Hinkie, who was great at acquiring assets and horrible at his job in general. And it's just the way it is. It's what it is true. Julian asks, will Steph Curry, KD, Clay, and Draymond all be Hall of Famers? They win the championship this year, and maybe they won like one more together. It'd be really hard to not see all four of them making the Hall of Fame. Like, I think Steph and KD are pretty much slam dunk. It's a matter of how you value Clay and how you value Draymond Green, because the numbers, the stats in and of themselves won't be there for those two guys. I mean, but the Hall of Fame's got guys like freaking Sam Jones in it and crap, and they were role players on those Celtics teams of the 50s and 60s. I mean, K.C. Jones was another role player. I don't even think he averaged 10 points a game in his damn career. But talking about guys like Clay and Draymond, who were great in the roles that they had that could have been better, people would recognize that, but they also recognize their importance and significance to that situation. I think there's a chance that all four of them end up in the Hall of Fame someday. Sure thing. Dave Garcia, who was better, Kareem AbdulJabbar or Hakeem Olajuwon? Hey, that's a great question. From an overall achievement standpoint, in terms of titles, finals MVPs, regular season MVPs, scoring championships, points scored in career longevity, it's Kareem AbdulJabbar. If I was talking about pure all-around talent, the better all-around talent was Hakeem the Dream. He was a beast of a defender, great rebounder, fantastic defender, fantastic shot blocker, and let's not get into his offensive game, which was even more skilled than Kareem's. Kareem is a legend. Kareem is an all-time great. Kareem too often gets dismissed out of the GOAT conversation, but I personally would take Hakeem. Real Oba, are you watching the Stanley Cup Finals? Not really, honestly, not really. Matt Meffe, who do you think is the next team to win their first World Series? Washington Nationals. Yeah, believe it or not. If the Capitals can be one win away from the Stanley Cup, why can't the Nationals win it all this year, huh? Mike Schmidt, is Mike Trout on pace to be the greatest baseball player ever? It is still incredibly early to have that discussion, but he is GOAT-type material. He is a legend. He is a stud already. And you have a long way to go in his career. Someday, if they move him out of center field, and you put him on the corners or something, try to extend his career, sky's the limit for Mike Trout. He might be in that top 5 or top 10 conversation by the time his career is over, and you never know what it could be. I wouldn't bet against it at this point. He's just been incredible since day one he got into the league. Ragamuffin, any thoughts on who the Jazz should target in free agency? Not right now, because I don't know what their cap situation is. I can't remember off the top of my head, outside of the top few guys, who would actually be available. Problem is, when you're Utah, you're not going to get the A-listers. You're going to get the B-listers by paying them A-lister money. And do you really want to do that? Ugh. But that's what sucks is, like, they got a future superstar there in Donovan Mitchell. They've got somebody to really build around. So, like, if you're Paul George or LeBron, you call me crazy, but they don't have a bad infrastructure. They made it to the second round of the playoffs in the West for the second year in a row. They've got a budding superstar in Donovan Mitchell. There's some upside there, and it just isn't going to matter. Nigerian Nightmare, over-under of 100 years before somebody dunks from the three-point line. Dunking from the three-point line, the college three-point line, has nobody done that yet? that would be under 100 years. I would put that over-under at 50 years, meaning I think they would go less than 50 years before somebody did that. NBA three-point line, that could be over 100 years. Dario DB, will you make videos about the upcoming World Cup? No. Why would I sit there and pretend to care about something that I don't care about for once every 4 years? Why would I sit here and come on here and talk about stuff I really don't care about and I really don't know that much about and I don't care to know that much about? I'm sure there are plenty of other people who talk about the World Cup that actually know what the hell they're talking about. I'll focus on other things, not the World Cup. At least I'll be a consistent American on this. I don't care about soccer consistently all the time, and I won't pretend for a few weeks this year in June, July that I do. Peter Jedra, any non-Chicago teams you wish would come back to relevancy? Oh, teams that I wish would come back to relevancy, Peter. In basketball, I think it's got to be the Knicks. That's the biggest media market in the country. The Knicks have been bad for quite a while now. It would be really, really nice if if the Knicks were great and the Lakers are great and the Bulls are great and you got the Celtics and the Sixers are great and a couple other assorted teams like either Houston or Dallas are great in those huge, massive markets in Dallas, Texas. The league, the NBA, would be in fantastic shape. So I think about it from an NBA standpoint, that would really, really, really be nice. Any other sports? From a baseball standpoint, who would be nice to see them be really relevant again? It's hard with baseball because you can get a lot of variance from one year to the next. So teams might have been relevant 5 years ago. They're not now, but they might be again in a couple of years. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question because that can change, like I said, quite a bit. Johan Ortiz, thoughts on Citizens United versus the FEC and barriers to real campaign finance reform? It always comes down to the fundamental question of money versus free speech, and is money speech? And, ultimately when you hear about, it's one of these things like, the law is the law, the Constitution is the Constitution. Sometimes we don't like some of the things that the Constitution allows for, such as big money plays big in our politics. It's bullshit, but it's the nature of the beast. The challenge to me comes in where do you draw that line from a legal and constitutional standpoint in terms of this big organization, this super PAC, this, that, can pour all this money into a campaign and into a candidacy, and are they potentially suppressing the free speech of somebody who can invest a lot less and has far fewer resources? I think that's the more important question. Look, in an ideal world to me, I feel like you would go down the constitutional amendment path and you would fucking change this because it's freaking ridiculous. It should not cost a number of hundreds of millions of dollars to run a stupid presidential campaign. We should not have Senate campaigns that cost $50-60 million, especially for a job that's going to pay somebody less than $200,000 a year in salary. That is dumb. It's annoying, but it is what it is. It's like when Mitt Romney said corporations are people too, and he got hammered for that. Yeah, it sounds terrible because it is terrible to think about, but it is also absolutely true. You can not like it, not agree with it, hate the basic fundamental premise of it like I do, and also understand, technically, based off of this ruling and that ruling, there are people that work for these companies. These companies employ people. They kind of are people in a different sort of way. But I would like to see some real campaign finance reform, but not going to happen. Dan Dillon, who had the bigger brain fart, Chris Webber or J.R. Smith? Now, you could even make the argument that J.R. Smith didn't even have the single biggest issue there. Like, who designed the play on that free throw to not have LeBron James down low in a rebounding position? Anybody tell me that? Did J.R. Smith miss the free throw? No, J.R. Smith actually came up with the big clutch rebound, making you wonder what the fuck Kevin Durant was doing in that situation. And he still ran it out to the top of the key, and yes, he had a brain fart, but the game was still tied, and the game still went to overtime, and it was game 1 of the NBA Finals, where Chris Webber did that in the 1993 National Championship game against North Carolina. He traveled, and it's like the referee showed mercy on him, didn't call it. Nobody came, got the ball out of Chris Webber's fucking hands, and then he gets in a situation where you allegedly have somebody on the bench telling him to to call timeout when they don't have any timeouts. That cost his team a national championship. What J.R. Smith did cost his team potentially one game of a series. Chris Webber's action cost them a championship. That is a far bigger brain fart and much, much worse. Much, much worse. And it still to this day is a stigma and an aura that I feel like has haunted Chris Webber, continues to haunt Chris Webber, and always will haunt Chris Webber. That's just the reality. But anyways, that is it for this Q&A video. Thanks again to all of you that asked your questions. I enjoyed this. We will have to do this again real soon. Make sure you check out the other videos on this channel. I will see you later.